I would walk into gyms and what I would see was one-on-one PT going on. And the trainers were, in their sweatpants, they're drinking smoothies, eating protein bars while they're with clients. For me, I saw right away that the quality of service that customers were paying for, they weren't getting.
We set out to build something for us. My partner and I were looking for a strength and conditioning program for people past their sport that I could do into my 50s. And it didn't exist. We just created this new kind of, hybrid gap right in the middle that was a little bit more accessible for a lot of people.
All right, Brandon. So always good to have new guests on the show. And I'm so glad that I was able to get introduced to you through, a friend. But, I want to jump right into this because I have listeners tuning in, and then primarily they're in the fitness space, right? I mean, that's why we're doing this show.
Yep.
And some of the things that they have questions around are typically, why would they franchise? Now we're going to get into this, but the thing that leads them into franchising are a few factors. This is what I've kind of reduced it down to, is like, one, people will franchise because they've identified that franchising is a quick way to earn some money. So they go, systems are in place. This is great. It's a quick way. I don't know those systems and I can just have it replicated for me. Another reason why I think people franchise is because, if there's a franchise model out there that all those systems are truly so automated and so systematized that they can get into it and be almost hands off, like a Dunkin' Donuts, for example, you can get right in. And as long as you use their playbook, you don't really have to step in your store. So something like that, or McDonald's, right? They've got McDonald's University. And then the other reason why people might franchise is that your brand is so unique that they go, I haven't really thought of it that way before, and I can get behind this. It's a movement I want to get behind. I believe in this. I believe in the person leading this. And that might be another reason. And sometimes it's all three of those and it all aligns well, and they believe in it. They've got systems that are in place. They can be hands off and they can make money. And so it's a total game changer. Where do you think your franchise fits in on those pieces?
Well, I think the main thing to start with too is just different kinds of franchises, right? Some of these people that the way you describe the middle one almost as a turnkey moneymaker. I also think those are not very hospitality driven franchises. So I realize you can get a coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, but it's not going to be the best coffee in your market. It's not going to be an experience, right? So I think fitness, unfortunately, we do, and no, not unfortunately, fortunately, we fall in the hospitality side of the business where, we choose fitness as our vessel, but there's very much a different aspect of the type of client that comes into our type of business. And, they're looking for something more out of their life. And even though I think we are extremely good at what we do, I'm hosting a training right now, kind of funny, with some of our trainers coming on across the United States right now, all different locations. And what I led with was training of the perfect athlete versus running a successful business is two polar opposites. And I said, you can technique someone right out the door if you're an asshole. And that was kind of like the first thing I said, right? So I've always talked about if you were a person that wanted a turnkey model that historically had printed money, we'll just kind of label it as that. I think you want to focus on something that is a very average product that reaches average America. If you are trying to do something excellent within a franchise model, there naturally is a bigger ceiling, and it is more complicated than just turnkey systems, right? Because in a hospitality business, a human is something that is very difficult to manage, and turnkey humans don't exist. So I think where we fall is it's a bit of a hybrid. I think there is a set of core values that people can get really excited about and say, man, that is, I like who they are. I like what they represent. And then I also think we are doing something very different in the industry, and the way that we are chasing excellence and trying to do something within a franchise model is a little bit different.
You know, when I talk to gym owners, one of the things that comes up a lot is when they're running their business, there's really two things that they're focused on. Obviously, one primary thing we're all focused on is, to your point, right? Not humans have their own unique way, and each human's different. So when you're in that hospitality environment, the primary goal, a lot of us in this industry, right, when we're training and coaching people, is we have that nurturing sense about us, and we want to take care of people. We want to see them do well. And so we want to give them the right program and adapt things to their needs and make it fit for them. But outside of that component, there's the money aspect, and you're trying to control two things. One, you're trying to keep people from leaving, because it happens, right? People leave, they churn through your business. And then you're trying to drive more traffic into your business. And not every business is really running things probably to their optimal. And I think that's why franchising is such a great avenue to go down, especially if you don't have those things, right? You talk about you're doing this training today and putting on this seminar with a lot of groups, talking about training clients and running a business. Those, to your point, are two polar opposites. Trying to learn that thing. Okay. What was it that gave you this idea? Because if I remember correctly, because I've, listened to some of the other podcasts and material you put out, you went from this point of when you were training yourself, you were working with another coach, and you're getting prepped for hockey. Maybe it was in your off season, and you would come in and you were at another level physically than a lot of the other athletes. So they were looking to you for guidance. The other athletes were on your program and how it was designed. So they went out and got your certification. So with that kind of another, you reached a point when you said, okay, I'm going to now open my own business, maybe with or without the idea of franchising. But then you got to another level where it evolved and you go, man, I think I got something here. And at what point was that? Where did you go, I think this is a repeatable thing and I can just give it to other people and they can go reproduce this and they can earn off of it and they can actually have what they want?
Yeah, there's a lot of points there. So I met my co-founder in the last year that we were on the same hockey team. I had a unfortunate career-ending concussion, and he knew he was retiring. And there was a mutual respect amongst friends on how we approached the game from a physicality side of things, pretty much, in short, how serious we took off ice to give ourselves a chance on ice type thing. But the other thing too was you had two stories that came to an end pretty quick. And we were two Canadian kids that now lived in the United States with no education. So we didn't go the college route. We went straight from major, junior, amateur in Canada right into professional. And then it ended. So fitness was kind of the only thing we knew. So at least it made sense to give it a go. I can't say it was easy, but it made sense. We had the background to chance it. We both had strong names in the city of Charlotte that we retired in. And we saw a pretty big hole in the market. And the hole we saw was you had like very good sports specific training. And then you almost had like YMCA level bootcamp classes. The boutique didn't really exist in the middle. And here's the funny thing, and this isn't a popular thing to say, but when we came out of the gates, we didn't have that helping people idea right in our, like, that wasn't the thing that drove us. We had a little bit of an arrogance that we said, we can own Charlotte. There's nothing good here. We can literally own this market. The byproduct was, oh my God, this is speaking to a lot of people and we actually do have reach. So we kind of grew into that helping people mindset because of a tenacity to do something completely unique. It probably took, I want to say, a year to know we were really onto something. But remember, we were very undercapitalized. We had our one location, and then we had people asking us, hey, would you ever design these programs for all the local YMCAs? And we're like, well, no, they're one of our biggest competitors, because the YMCAs in Charlotte are actually beautiful. They're like Lifetimes or like Equinoxes, like that level of nice. Then we had people say, would you ever partner with us in this other city? And I don't really know you, so why would we do that? And then someone said, would you ever thought about franchising? And that kind of was the start of it, where we hired a consulting firm that helped us build out that first franchise agreement and corresponding FTD. And that was, call it 12 years ago. And we were real patient in the first 6 or 7 years. Like, we never even advertised ever. And we just, as the right person and the right market presented itself, we made a gut decision to move forward or not. And that got us to about 10 locations. And then we were at that point where at 10 or 11 locations, 4 corporate stores, running a franchise system, like, me and Kirk, my partner, looked at one another, we're like, I don't know how much more the two of us can do here. And that was when we were approached within the same kind of calendar year from a couple different groups. And they all had different pitches. And the one that aligned with us the most was, we're not looking to take out the founders. We're looking to grow with the founders. We're kind of really good at this scale thing. What do we say we, try to swing for the fences here and see what we can do with this? Give you more time back to make the product great. We'll provide capital and advice and operational excellence around the scaling side of the business. So that was 2019. And, making our way through the pandemic and where we sit today, we're just over 40 units, and we'll be at 50 by mid-year. And, the runway's good. It's been a fun ride, but it is a classic entrepreneurial story. Like, we just figured shit out on the fly. And yeah, now we can look back and kind of joke about it, laugh about it at times, which we're not good at, kind of be proud of it because we still think we got a lot to do. But yeah, I mean, it's a real entrepreneurial story for sure.
So what do you think is the big differentiator between, you got F45, you got Barry's Bootcamp, you got BFT, I think, they're out. You've got Alloy. So there's a lot of variations of, I would say, similar boutique category, but not necessarily the same model, obviously. And then you got CrossFit, right? And I think yours, the way that you guys structure yours, I've never been to a class, but is similar in the sense that you're strength focused. CrossFit is more than just strength focused. So tell me, how do you really differentiate between the other franchise groups?
What's busy for sure, right? Alloy has a nice little niche because they're a PT kind of driven company, but definitely the F45s, the ISIs, Rumble. I mean, you name them. There's a ton right now. CrossFit's interesting, right? We came from that world long before people even knew what it was, like real early before it hit pop culture and kind of the birth and the gritty years of CrossFit, I would call it. And who knows what's happening with them right now? I know they're struggling, and it's, I have a lot of respect for the origin of that whole company. So I hope they find the right buyer and find the right direction. But I'll sum it up like this. We hang out in pop culture, boutique fitness. Yeah. I think we do it really well. But we do hang out with everybody you mentioned. I think the way we have distinguished ourselves for years has been that we have always been strength bias, and we have always been known for the training, the actual coaching on the floor. Now that strength is becoming more popular and more mainstream, it does, but it's also becoming less of a distinguishing factor. Even though like we're a lot more strength biased. I mean, we have 100-pound dumbbells on our floor. That's very different than say an F45, right? But I think in the general public's eye, you're seeing strength training in marketing and being brought into facilities now. I think now the coaching more than ever is the thing that seems to really distinguish us. The program design, harder to explain. It does what it does and the results speak for themselves. But I think the client experience and how we approach the floor, the training aspect is what really separates us. And the funny thing is, even though our industry is getting bigger, there's more people involved, there's more money being spent on fitness. The trainer of today is a lot weaker than the trainer of 10 years ago. It's kind of, it kind of sucks, but the level.
I'd agree with you. I see that today too.
Yeah. The level of trainer coming on today is just not at that place. They're not self-educated. They're not as determined to self-educate. And you couple that with a very heavily influencer driven information cycle. It's a lot to fight against. And that's, even more tough for the consumer, who to believe, the people they look up to and the people they follow and the programs they've tried. It's not difficult to stand out, and it is very difficult.
Yeah. The programs they tried, that's why they're on this repetitive cycle of looking for the next thing, because they keep trying something new that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, when I was, I had done some personal training, and I had some, several personal training locations that operated as a third party location. And this is like back in 2006. And the thing that I noticed as the gap, and I want you to explain when it was that you noticed the gap, and how you were able to identify it. But I would walk into gyms, and what I would see was one-on-one PT going on. And the trainers were, in their sweatpants, they're drinking smoothies, eating protein bars while they're with clients. And, they're eating out of their, heated up meals, that they threw in the microwave quick, and they weren't giving the attention. So for me, I saw right away that the quality of service that customers were wanting or paying for, they weren't getting. And so I saw that as a need and a gap that needed to be filled. And hence the propulsion of what I was doing. With you, at what point did you said YMCA, and then you guys had, some of these other facilities that were nearby, CrossFit and things like that. When were you kind of like narrowing in on this gap, and you said, this is it?
So I can't speak for my partner, but one of the things I noticed at about 27, 28 years old, with a kind of broken down body from my sport, there was not so you take CrossFit at the time, it's a sport. Mm-hmm. You're trying to win and you're chasing a scoreboard. It also involved a very technical piece of equipment called the barbell that is very unforgiving for people not well trained on it. And if I was to dumb it down, my partner and I were looking for a strength and conditioning program for people past their sport that I could do into my 50s. And it didn't exist. You know, like running on the stairmill to heaven is not going to do it for you. And even with a background in Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting, I knew that the sport of CrossFit had a very finite window, you know, between 20 and 30. And then I started finding that, you know, my CrossFit workouts a week had to be three times a week versus 4 or 5 because it was really beaten down. Like I had knee problems, I had shoulder surgery. So maybe if you have a healthy body, maybe you can do it longer. But we set out to build something for us, you know. And the other thing we did notice was, by the way, I love the barbell. So cheers to the barbell. I'm not shitting on it. But as we were running these facilities that were barbell heavy, we were missing a massive chunk of the market. Like there were yogis, there were triathletes, there were weekend warriors. Before, you know, High Rocks became big in these last couple of years, remember like Tough Mudder and Spartan races and stuff like that, right? But we were like, there are people kicking their own ass in their own discipline that were not coming into these barbell programs. But we knew like strength could bring a lot of good to their life. So by removing that was another thing that allowed us to enter into the market with similar movement patterns. And you know, we took varied intensities versus just going 100% every day, but we just created this new kind of, I don't know, hybrid gap right in the middle that was a little bit more accessible for a lot of people. And the other thing that was important, I thought, was as soon as you move the scoreboard and you have a start and stop point, you all of a sudden create a very inclusive training floor that you can train Mr. Olympia and someone, a first timer, because you're not singling out the person that's finishing last every day. I mean, like we're going to start and stop at this point, load yourself appropriately, pick an intensity that works for you, reset when necessary, and let's go.
You would think that would just be a natural thing to know, right? I mean, and go back to, physical education in elementary school. And I always felt bad for it because you'd see it on their faces, right? For the kids that were coming in last. And it was known across the whole PE department that they were in last. And it sucked. It's no different than like, you know, playing sports in PE or during recess. And, you know, the person who gets picked last is like the one that he's not going to get the ball, is not going to get is not going to get any chances to shoot. And you can see the disappointment, right, in their faces. So it just kind of be common sense, I would think, if you want to make this more inclusive, that you just would remove that totally. I think CrossFit, to your point, was more geared towards athletes, especially in the very beginning. But what do you think is the biggest challenge for you? I mean, you're growing this. You've been doing it for the past 13 years. To your point, first 6 years, you know, you kind of were really methodical about who it was you guys were bringing on, probably still very much so. But you weren't advertising that you guys were franchising. And so you had this opportunity to kind of cherry pick your first group of people that you wanted to be part of your brand. And you still have that cherry pick option. It's just that now more people know about you. What do you think is the biggest challenge that you guys faced in the past? And what's the biggest challenge you think you're about ready to face coming up?
It's what we started with, right? It's a human business. So, and scale is a delicate balance of how far can we take this? And in doing so, what is the right strategic risk to take? Is that chancing a franchisee who may not possess the law of attraction, but they're in a good market? Is that chancing, Mr. or Mrs. XYZ city that's in a bad market, but they bring that presence? And guess what? You make mistakes. We're all human. That's one of the things I just don't get. People that are in my seat that they act like they never have struggling locations or ones that potentially fail at times. Like this is small business ownership. To your point, a franchise system removes some of the barriers and it gives you a head start. But all of the things that, anything that would affect a mom and pop business, hiring, a pandemic, life, a second baby that comes into the family. Like a lot of times people like to point down when a unit is, or punch down when a unit's struggling. They're like, oh yeah, the system's broken. Well, they just had a death in the family and had a new child that came into the mix. Their bandwidth's a little different now. We got to figure out, maybe it's time to move that to a different operator because life has changed for them. So I think like franchising has been sold for the longest time as a turnkey model that never fails. I don't even know how it got to this place. It's a small business within a small business.
I would say it got to that place because of the advent of the fast food joints. Right? People are going to eat. People don't necessarily want to exercise. And with the fast food joints being able to implement those systems, you look at it and you go, throw anybody in there, they can flip a burger. Throw anybody in there, they can throw a pizza in the oven. You just teach them step 1, 2, and 3. And the business owner doesn't necessarily need to be there. So if there is a death in the family, if there is a life change, if something traumatic happens, they're still kind of separated enough that those things don't happen. But to your point, you're in the hospitality industry, right? That's what we do. We're with people all the time, including the owners and founders of the companies. And they are small businesses because that's something I want to jump into is like, what can they expect from I know some of this stuff you can't talk about because it's in the FDD and, they got to sign some documents, but realistically, put a number on it. Getting into your franchise model, how big of a space is it? And then what can they expect for, rough earnings, right? I know you can probably give that number because I've seen plenty of franchise groups, at least publish that. What would that be? I mean, 10 units, certainly they can have a great life and separate themselves and put people in place and have their own internal systems. But small business, it's a little different.
Yeah, so you're right. You got to be careful of what they call earnings claims. If you are really interested in our business, we do publish what they call an item 19 that I would be happy to share those kind of numbers. But I can tell you, this is how I can kind of work around the legal aspects of it. First thing you asked was size of facility. So we usually do. We've been working on shrinking our floor plan as best you can without compromising the training experience. But we can do facilities between about 2,500 square feet. I like them a little bigger, but just the way we've been looking at real estate recently, that's the number I like today, just with cost of goods and build out and stuff like that. We used to be closer to 3. We have done some for 23.5, but I would say 2,500 is a good number. So I'm going to give everybody a math lesson of how we reverse engineer our process, and then I'm going to let you guys come to your own conclusion. So when we build out a business plan for any unit, the primary goal is to break even at 150 members. And it goes as far as if I'm shown a space that a franchisee falls in love with emotionally, and it breaks that 150 members, I'll be like, no, be patient. We're not going to take that space. I know you love it. I know you think it's in the right place, but I don't want that break even to go from 150 to 180. So if we get you to 150 and we try to do that in the first 6 months of the business, like that's how everything is designed, even the way we structure leases with rent, PI. Whether it's free rent or half rent up to that 6 months, because our goal is for you to be at that break-even point at 6 months. Sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. Once you get past that, we typically keep 80 cents on the dollar for every dollar brought in past that. So here in Charlotte, we're about $200 a month. So we like to build a system that at 250 members, so 100 above, it's not a cap, but you're happy, right? So 200 extra 100 members, 20,000, you got about 16,000 in profit. Well, I'm sitting in a location that has 400 members right now, and we have locations in the low threes and some in the middle. So you can do the basic math of where this can become a really nice business quick once you get past that 150. And we don't really see membership scheduling issues until you kind of got to that 350, 400 threshold. We wouldn't, if you're at 350, you should be looking for another. Honestly, if you're at 300, you should be looking for another unit. You shouldn't be trying to cram another 20 bodies in. But I think that's some basic math where, that same 16,000, if you're 200 above break even, you're plus 30,000 a month in revenue, which I think is a very good business in our space.
Oh yeah. Easy.
So that's the best way I can do it without getting myself in shit.
And what is the, you guys do all the programming? Like if I were to franchise with you, programming is, I don't have to think about it, just like your clients don't have to think about it. The business is just implementing whatever it is you guys have on schedule.
It is. And the cool thing is like, we are still passionate and small enough that my partner and I do all the programming. Awesome. Yeah. So we and we're not lazy about it either. We program every Wednesday because we're so particular on making sure the last week hit right. The following week, what are we looking at? The 12-week cycle that we are in, are we accomplishing our goals? The 2-week micro cycle are we in? Are we being diverse enough but repetitive enough so we can compete? Like, we nerd out about this stuff. But yeah, we honestly, from what I've been told, because we're now at a level, right, where we are getting, whether it's employees or staff members that have been in other systems. And from what I've been told is we provide a hell of a lot of support for that franchisee. So we have a 171 step process from signing your franchise agreement to getting open. And that's everything from the announcement to site selection, to the LOI process, to the lease process, to bringing in our contractors and architects, to the hiring process, to the grassroots marketing, into the digital marketing, into the opening process. My partner and I still go to every one of our openings. I just got back from Indianapolis last night. So yeah, we have 171 steps. And I hope, like, anyone listening to it, that don't be overwhelmed. You should be saying, oh, it sounds like they got their shit together. So we try as best we can to give as much support as you can, to the point sometimes we're like, maybe we got to let these people run their own businesses. But, I'm happy with, I'll say this. I am fortunate enough to be the guy that delivers our message a lot, but I'm extremely proud of the powerhouse team that makes us and me look good on podcasts like this.
Well, you're natural, man. So you're going to look good either way.
Take that too.
So yeah, I got two other questions for you. One related to MADabolic, and then the other just kind of just unrelated. So first of all, when you're training today, the way that your training style, are you training yourself based on the programming that you're putting together for your franchisees?
Me personally. You know what? I got a sad sob story. So that career-ending head injury that I had really it affects portions of my life, and one of them is training volume and intensity. So it took me a long time to find my groove. But if I was to sum it up, I need to be very careful with my blood pressure and pulse not going to a certain level. And then once I have an exertion point, I actually have to get back to a resting point before I push again. So I do our style of movements on my own in a much more controlled environment with a heart rate monitor and a clock that doesn't let me get competitive.
It was really serious.
Because if I, and it's weird because they're starting to understand post concussions, how to treat them in those first kind of 24 hours. But, I had mine 15 years ago, and what they don't really know how to do is help. Every different brain heals a little bit different. And unfortunately, my symptom is, when you when you're like filling up your car, like with gas, and if you just let it overflow a little bit, that film kind of like spills all over the place. Well, that film ends up living between my ears and around my eyes, and things get very foggy, and I get very irritable, and memory and a lot of shit where I got to just be very careful with how hard I train. So sadly enough, one of the biggest things that I have to deal with as a person that comes from a performance-driven background, I used to be able to shut up and just lead by example. And now kind of in this weird seat, I feel at times a little bit like a poser that says, trust us, we're this good. But I'm kind of well past that now, having a great team. But it's, it was a new thing to learn that, competition and performance is kind of out of your life now, and you're going to have to figure out how to compete in another way. And that's become business.
Yeah. It's the mental component that now you can place yourself in versus just, like you said, strategy, right? That's one of your big things, is strategically defining the process on how you grow your brand.
I miss it though.
I bet you do
miss it. I can't tell you.
I totally get that.
I miss it.
Kind of feels like you're handicapped a bit and you can't get out on the field.
I've actually, like, in the darkest times of thinking through it with like people close to me, my loved ones, my parents, my partner, my sister, like I've admitted to saying like I would give a leg.
Yeah.
Because at least then I could try to win an Olympic gold medal in something, because pain is not a thing. But when your head's off, it's a difficult thing to.
Yeah, you're debilitated. You're being stopped from doing something else that you want to prevail on. Yeah, sorry, man. But it's good to know that you're able to coach. If you can't go out there and compete and play, you can be on the sidelines and coach. And then use your strategy to build others. What if you had, if someone just gave you $100,000 and they said, invest this in fitness, but you can't invest it into your own brand, MADabolic, what would you be investing in?
I don't know what I'd do with 100, but I think some of the things I'm paying attention to right now, and this is why 100 is not going to do it. For the longest time in our industry, there's a real lazy argument that, and I'm speaking about this a lot, that we need more inclusive products to grow this industry and to get that other 80% of people that are not gym goers to become gym goers. And the way I see it is, we have all the inclusive products you can ever think of. We've had Planet Fitness for years. They're on every corner, and that's not solving the riddle. And my opinion is we need to start developing more like exclusive offerings that speak to specific populations. And when I say exclusive, I don't mean excluding people. I mean targeting specific people. I'll give you a good example. So GLP-1s right now are everywhere, right? People are talking about them. And I just read that F45 is somehow going to include them.
But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, they don't even have lobbies, so I don't know how they're going to become a medical facility. But
they're throwing stuff at the wall.
I can work. Yeah, and here's what I could tell you. I am okay with GLP-1s for the right kind of person. That is, they're in a deconditioned population that just cannot get going. I am okay for this. But I can tell you that individual, their general health, their tissue health, their everything that they need, they should not be coming into an F45 or a MADabolic. We need to develop a program for people on GLP-1s, brand it, make it a community, make it empowering. And you see how that is exclusive? That's excluding me. But that is targeting a very specific community. So if I had $100,000 or any level of money, it would be to chase a niche that didn't exist and try to create a new category. It wouldn't try to be plugging myself into a category, especially one that has existed and thinking it's going to produce a different result. I just think it's just crazy to think that way.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge that we've been facing we've been at that 80% mark. Might be less than that now, but it just kind of teeters at that point. And it's been like that for years. And the solutions have been things like, these semaglutides and giving people a magic pill solution, or what they believe to think is a magic pill solution for weight loss or diabetes or whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, you got to move your body. We're designed to move, right? So you got to move your body and increase that core temperature and see actual changes happening, to your point, tissue changes, organ changes, chemical changes in your body. And taking external derivatives of something that you should really probably not be putting in your body unless it's advocated by your health professional. I think it kind of ruins, in some sense, the reason why somebody should be involved in fitness, right? Because it gives them it gives them the cheat code that doesn't really help them.
Yeah, like one of the side effects of these drugs is not a workout habit. And for whatever reason, what we have created to date has not spoken to them. So you have to think about that population and say, how do we meet them where they are? What is the product that speaks to them? I made a suggestion the other day, which is funny because we have a partnership with them. MADabolic and GoRuck do some work together.
GoRuck's based out of
But think about that.
They live here where I live. Yeah.
Oh, do they? Great. But think about like what it provides, right? You got a loaded walk, but it's also going to be very forgiving. You could develop a community of these people that feel safe talking about where they've come from. And you're not going to kick the living shit out of their tissues that may not be ready for that. And maybe the fact that it's a community, it develops that workout habit that has eluded them for years. And that's just one example. Like, I just think we need to start creating new categories, because one of the things that I've been on the conference circuit the past few months, it's kind of that time of year, and the wellness wallet is the biggest it's ever been right now, meaning it's the term people use, how much they spend on themselves per month for fitness. The funny thing is membership growth is flatlined, yet spending is up. So it's just the same people are spending more on themselves. We haven't created any new categories or new members. So something's off, right? We got to do something different for the other 80%. And the other thing I've been talking about too is we don't have to find the 80%. Find 5%. Yeah. Could you imagine if that 80 became 75, and even imagine it became 40%?
Oh, that'd be nuts.
Of people belong to some fitness. It would change the entire country, in a good way. So I just think, whenever
pharmaceutical companies would be in pain if that happened, though.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah, I like everything you're saying. I think there's a lot of value about what you guys are doing. Looking forward to seeing what you do with that 100K when I give it to you. So looking forward to seeing what you do with that 100K when I give it to you.
Yeah.
You have to stretch it.
The needle today, but
stretch.
You definitely would.
Brandon, such a good time having you on, man. Really appreciate it. And anyone listening, I put this stuff in the show notes. So if you want to find out more about MADabolic and Brandon, feel free to click on those links there. It'll take you to one of the pages where you're going to find some great information on how you can get involved. And as always, see you guys on the flip side.